The Griffith Observatory stood silhouetted against the Los Angeles night sky, its domed roof gleaming under the moonlight. Inside, Dr. Maya Patel adjusted the massive telescope, her dark eyes reflecting the stars she'd dedicated her life to studying. At 32, she'd established herself as one of the most promising astronomers in the field, specializing in exoplanet research. Her colleagues had long since gone home, leaving Maya alone with the cosmos, just how she preferred it. "Excuse me," a voice said from behind, startling her. "I hope I'm not intruding." Maya turned to find a tall man with striking silver-blue eyes watching her. His features were classically handsome yet somehow unusual, high cheekbones, a straight nose, and a jawline that could cut glass. His dark hair had an odd shimmer under the low lights of the observatory. "We're closed to the public," Maya said, straightening her lab coat. "How did you get in?" The man smiled apologetically. "Dr. Ramos let me in. I'm Orion Jackson, the new visiting researcher from Cambridge." There was the slightest hesitation before he named the university. "I've read all your papers on potentially habitable exoplanets. Your work is unparalleled." Something fluttered in Maya's chest, a combination of professional pride and something else she couldn't quite identify. "Thank you, but flattery won't excuse after-hours disturbances, Mr. Jackson. Please, call me Orion." His eyes seemed to literally twinkle. "And I apologize for the intrusion. I've just arrived and was too eager to see the facility. Perhaps I could make it up to you with coffee?" 3 days later, they met at a small cafe near the observatory. Maya found herself captivated by Orion's knowledge of astronomy and his curious questions about Earth's cultures and customs. He listened to her with intensity that made her feel truly seen for perhaps the first time in her life. Their coffee date extended to dinner, and one date turned into several. Orion was unlike anyone Maya had ever met, brilliant yet humble, knowledgeable about celestial bodies yet charmingly naive about pop culture. He approached everyday experiences with childlike wonder, whether tasting ice cream or watching the sunset. "Have you ever considered," he asked her one evening as they lay on a blanket stargazing, "that we might not be alone in the universe?" Maya laughed. "I'm an exoplanet researcher. Of course I've considered it." "No," Orion said, his voice unusually serious. "I mean really considered it, what it would mean to meet beings from another world. Would humans embrace them or fear them?" Maya pondered this. "I think fear often comes from misunderstanding. If we could communicate, share knowledge and experiences, I'd hope we'd choose connection over fear." Something softened in Orion's expression. That night, beneath the stars, he kissed her for the first time. Their relationship progressed with unusual speed. Maya's best friend Talia expressed concern over how little they knew about Orion's past. "He never talks about his family, Maya. Don't you find that strange?" But Maya was in love. Orion's occasional oddities, his discomfort with certain foods, his fascination with mundane human activities, his midnight stargazing sessions, only endeared him to her more. 6 months after they met, during a meteor shower they watched from the observatory roof, Orion knelt before her. In his palm rested a ring unlike any Maya had ever seen. The band appeared to be made of a metal she couldn't identify, with a stone that seemed to contain swirling galaxies within it. "Maya Patel," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "you've shown me more beauty on this planet than I ever imagined possible. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Without hesitation, Maya said yes, never suspecting that the greatest discovery of her astronomical career was already right in front of her. The engagement ring on Maya's finger caught the light in ways she couldn't explain, sometimes seeming to glow from within when darkness fell. Her colleagues at the observatory had congratulated her, though several expressed surprise at the whirlwind nature of the relationship. Dr. Ramos, her mentor, had taken her aside with concern etched across his weathered face. 6 months is very quick, Maya. Are you certain about this? he asked, his eyes drifting to the unusual ring. I've never been more certain of anything, Maya had replied with conviction, though in the quiet moments alone, questions occasionally surfaced. Why did Orion never speak of his family? Why were there no childhood photos among his possessions? Why did he sometimes stare at everyday objects, a blender, a television remote, with such fascination? As wedding preparations accelerated, these peculiarities multiplied. When they met with the caterer, Orion had seemed confused by standard menu options. No salt, the caterer had asked, reviewing their preferences. Actually, Orion interjected, I require significantly more sodium than is typical. Perhaps triple the normal amount in my portion? When both Maya and the caterer stared at him, he had quickly added, medical condition. Rare. Later that night, Maya found him in the kitchen, spooning table salt directly into his mouth. He'd quickly hidden the evidence when he noticed her watching. Just a craving, he'd explained with an awkward smile. Then there was the matter of his family's absence. When Maya asked about inviting them to the wedding, pain flashed across Orion's face. They can't travel. The distance is too great, he said softly. Where I come from is very far away. England isn't that far, Maya had replied with a laugh. Yes. England, Orion agreed too quickly. Cambridge. That's where I'm from. But when she'd casually mentioned punting on the River Cam, Orion had looked at her blankly before quickly changing the subject. 3 weeks before the wedding, Maya returned home early from work to find Orion speaking rapidly in a language she'd never heard before, the syllables rising and falling in impossible patterns, occasionally punctuated by clicks and tones that didn't sound like they could be produced by human vocal cords. He was standing before the bedroom window, staring intently at the night sky. Orion, she called. He spun around, clearly startled, and snapped something shut in his hand. For just a moment, Maya thought she saw a faint blue glow between his fingers. You're home early, he said, his voice slightly higher than usual. What language was that? Maya asked, setting down her bag. Oh, just a rare dialect from a remote region. I was practicing. He slipped whatever he'd been holding into his pocket. How was your day? That night, Maya awoke to find Orion's side of the bed empty. From the balcony came a soft, pulsing light. Wrapping her robe around herself, she approached quietly. Through the partially open door, she saw Orion holding what appeared to be a small, glowing orb that hovered above his palm. As he moved his fingers, star-like projections appeared in the air around him, constellations, but not ones Maya recognized from Earth's skies. She must have made a sound, because suddenly Orion closed his hand around the orb, extinguishing the light, and turned toward her with an expression of alarm. Maya. I was just stargazing, he said unconvincingly. With some kind of projection device, she asked. I've never seen technology like that. Just a prototype. From the lab. He quickly changed the subject. You should see our wedding venue at night, the stars are incredible. Despite these odd occurrences, the wedding day approached rapidly. Maya found herself swept up in final arrangements, dress fittings, and her maid of honor Talia's increasingly vocal concerns. Have you noticed how he never gets sick? Talia asked during the bachelorette party. And how he can recite astronomical calculations without a calculator? And that weird thing where his eyes seem to reflect light like a cat's? He's special, Maya defended, though a small knot of uncertainty had begun to form in her stomach. The rehearsal dinner was the night before the wedding, held at an upscale restaurant with a view of the city. Halfway through the meal, a strange, high-pitched sound had caused Orion to freeze mid-conversation. It was barely perceptible, perhaps a feedback loop from the sound system, but he'd immediately excused himself, returning 10 minutes later looking pale and distracted. That night, in separate hotel rooms as per tradition, Maya found herself unable to sleep. She took out her phone and began searching, Cambridge University Astronomy Department, and then, after hesitation, Orion Jackson Cambridge. The search returned nothing relevant, no academic papers, no faculty listings, no social media profiles. For the first time, real doubt crept into Maya's mind. Who was she really marrying? As dawn broke on her wedding day, Maya made a decision. After the ceremony, she would ask Orion directly about all these inconsistencies. Whatever secrets he was keeping, she deserved to know before they truly began their life together. Little did she know that the universe had other plans for revealing the truth, ones that would unfold much sooner, and much more dramatically, than she could possibly imagine. The wedding ceremony unfolded like a dream under a canopy of twinkling lights designed to mimic the night sky. Maya's ivory gown shimmered with subtle beadwork that caught the light as she walked down the aisle. Orion stood waiting, resplendent in his tuxedo, his eyes shining with such intensity that several guests later commented on their unusual brightness. When they exchanged vows, Orion's voice trembled with emotion. "I cross vast distances to find you," he said, deviating slightly from the traditional words they'd rehearsed. "Our union bridges worlds that were never meant to touch, yet here we stand, proof that love transcends the boundaries of everything we know." The reception proceeded with champagne flowing and music filling the air. Maya noticed Orion abstained from alcohol, instead drinking from a silver flask he occasionally retrieved from his pocket. When she asked what was in it, he smiled mysteriously and said, "Electrolytes. Doctor's orders." As midnight approached, they bid farewell to their guests and departed for the honeymoon suite at the Grand Celestial Hotel, chosen by Orion for its floor-to-ceiling windows and unobstructed view of the night sky. The hotel staff had scattered rose petals across the king-sized bed and left champagne chilling in ice. "I need to freshen up," Orion said once they were alone, kissing Maya's forehead before disappearing into the bathroom with a small toiletry bag. "Don't wait up if you're tired." Maya sat on the edge of the bed, removing her heels and the elaborate pins from her hair. 20 minutes passed, then 30. From behind the bathroom door came strange sounds, a humming vibration and occasional flashes of blue light visible in the gap beneath the door. "Orion?" Maya called. "Is everything okay in there?" No response came except for what sounded like labored breathing. Concerned, Maya approached the door. "Orion? I'm coming in." She turned the handle slowly. The door wasn't locked. As it swung open, Maya's mind struggled to process what her eyes were seeing. Standing before the mirror was a being that was simultaneously Orion and not Orion. The basic structure of his face remained, but his skin now had a translucent quality with a subtle blue undertone that pulsed with what appeared to be bioluminescence. His eyes, always unusual, now glowed with an internal light, lacking pupils entirely. Where his dark hair had been now grew what looked like crystalline filaments that moved slightly, as if floating in water. Most shocking were his hands, elongated, with an extra joint in each finger, and webbing between them that glowed with the same blue light that emanated from beneath his partially unbuttoned shirt. For one eternal moment, they stared at each other in the mirror's reflection. "Maya," Orion whispered, his voice carrying a harmonic overtone that hadn't been there before. "I can explain." Maya's legs gave way beneath her, and she sank to the floor, back pressed against the doorframe. "What?" she gasped, unable to formulate a complete question. Orion turned slowly, hands raised in a placating gesture. "Please don't be afraid. I'm still me. I'm still the person you fell in love with." "Who are you?" Maya whispered. "What are you?" "My name is actually Orion," he said, taking a careful step toward her. "But I'm not from Cambridge. I'm not from Earth at all." He gestured toward the window, where stars glimmered in the night sky. "My home is a planet orbiting a star in what you call the Orion Nebula." Maya's scientific mind battled with the impossible reality before her. "That's not possible." The Orion Nebula is 1,344 light-years away. No one could travel that distance. My species has technology you would consider impossible, Orion said gently. We've been observing Earth for centuries. I was sent as a cultural attaché, to study humans up close, to determine if official contact might someday be possible. So our relationship, our marriage, it was all research? Maya's voice broke on the last word. Orion's strange eyes widened with distress. No. Meeting you was part of my mission, yes, but falling in love with you was never planned. It violated every protocol. I was supposed to maintain emotional distance, to observe only. He knelt before her, careful to keep some space between them. But you, brilliant, passionate, beautiful you made that impossible. Why didn't you tell me? Maya asked, her scientific curiosity beginning to override her shock. Why the deception? Would you have believed me? Orion asked simply. Without proof, would you have accepted that the man courting you came from another star system? And with proof, he gestured to his altered appearance, wouldn't your fear have prevented any chance for us? Maya's mind raced through every strange incident, every unusual behavior, every evasive answer. The salt, she said suddenly. Your planet has a different composition? Orion nodded. Higher sodium content in both atmosphere and water. My species evolved accordingly. And the language I heard you speaking? My native tongue. I was reporting back to my supervisors. A look of guilt crossed his luminescent features. I stopped making those reports 3 months ago, when I decided to stay on Earth. With you. Maya's scientific training kicked in fully now, asking the questions that needed answers. What happens now? Is your appearance now permanent? Are there others like you here? Does our government know about your species? Orion sighed, a surprisingly human gesture from his now clearly alien form. That depends entirely on what you decide in this moment, Maya. I've broken my people's laws by revealing myself to you. I've violated your trust by concealing my true nature. Our future, if we still have one together, will be complicated by both facts. He extended one glowing hand toward her, not quite touching. I understand if this changes everything. I'll accept whatever you decide. But know this, everything I feel for you is real. When I vowed today to love you across vast distances, I meant it more literally than you could have known. Maya stared at the alien hand offered to her, the hand of her husband, the being she had pledged her life to just hours earlier. The moment of choice hung between them, heavy with consequence, as the stars of Orion's distant home constellation shone through the window above them. Maya's hand trembled as she reached out, hovering just inches from Orion's outstretched fingers. The soft blue glow emanating from his skin cast ethereal patterns across her wedding ring. I need to understand everything, she said firmly, her scientist's mind asserting control over her emotional turmoil. No more secrets, Orion. If that's even really your name. It is the closest approximation in your language, he replied, slowly withdrawing his hand when she didn't take it. In my native tongue, it contains tonal elements your vocal cords couldn't produce. Maya rose shakily to her feet, keeping her distance. Show me. Show me who you really are, completely. Orion nodded and began unbuttoning his shirt. As the fabric fell away, Maya gasped. His torso appeared almost crystalline in places, with swirling patterns of bioluminescence that pulsed in rhythm with what she assumed was his heartbeat. Along his ribcage, small gill-like structures fluttered slightly. We evolved on a world with both terrestrial and aquatic environments, he explained, noticing her gaze. Our cities exist in both realms. Are you compatible with Earth's atmosphere? With our gravity? Our food? The questions tumbled out as Maya's scientific curiosity began to override her fear. My species is remarkably adaptable. We can survive in various environments with minor discomfort, Orion explained. The device I've been using, he gestured to what looked like a small crystalline disc on the bathroom counter, helps adjust my biological systems and projects a field that makes me appear fully human. Maya approached the device cautiously. May I? Orion nodded. It won't harm you. She picked it up, feeling a slight vibration against her palm. This is how you've maintained your human appearance? Yes. It requires recalibration every few days, which is what I was doing when you walked in. Maya set the device down and turned back to face him. Her analytical mind was now fully engaged. The ring you gave me, it's not from Earth, is it? Orion shook his head. The metal is an alloy from my world. The stone contains bioluminescent microorganisms suspended in a crystalline matrix. They respond to your emotional state. When you're happy, they glow brighter. Maya glanced down at her ring, noticing for the first time how its swirling patterns mirrored those on Orion's skin. Why Earth? She asked, moving to sit on the edge of the bed. Of all the places in the galaxy you could have explored, why here? Orion moved cautiously to sit beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. Your planet is unique in our surveys, a world of incredible biodiversity and cultural diversity. But more importantly, humans stand at a crucial evolutionary juncture. You have the technology to destroy yourselves or to reach the stars. My people believe that with subtle guidance, humanity might choose the latter path. So you're what, alien anthropologists? Despite everything, Maya felt a smile tugging at her lips at the irony. In a sense, Orion acknowledged. Though we prefer the term, stellar diplomats. And falling in love with the natives? Is that standard diplomatic procedure? There was an edge to Maya's voice now. Orion's luminescence dimmed noticeably. No. It's actually strictly forbidden. When my superiors realized what was happening between us, they ordered me to return immediately. Maya's heart constricted. But you didn't. I chose you instead, he said simply. I severed communication with my homeworld 3 months ago, when I asked you to marry me. The weight of his sacrifice began to register. You can never go home? Orion looked out the window toward the stars. The choice was mine to make. I knew the consequences. What will they do? Will they come for you? Fear crept back into Maya's voice. No. Our protocols are clear. If an operative goes rogue, they're considered lost. No retrieval, no contact. It's too risky to expose more of our kind. Maya processed this information, her mind whirling. So you're stranded here. Forever. I wouldn't call it stranded, Orion said softly. Not when I'm with you. Something broke inside Maya then, the last barrier of disbelief. Tentatively, she reached out and touched his face. His skin was cooler than a human's, with a slight texture like fine silk. All those nights we spent stargazing, she whispered. You were looking toward home, weren't you? Orion nodded, leaning gently into her touch. Sometimes. But increasingly, I was simply enjoying seeing our universe through your eyes. Your wonder at the cosmos reminded me why I became an explorer in the first place. I have so many questions, Maya said. About your world, your people, your science. And I'll answer all of them, Orion promised. But first, I need to know, can you accept me as I am? Can we build a life together knowing what you now know? Maya considered the enormity of the question. This man, this being, had crossed interstellar space, had given up his home and his people, all for her. Beyond the shock and betrayal lay an undeniable truth, the connection they shared was real, regardless of its origins. I don't know what our future looks like, she admitted honestly. This is a lot to process. But I made vows today too. For better or worse, in sickness and in health. She reached for his strange, beautiful hand and intertwined her fingers with his. I suppose we should add, regardless of planetary origin, to those vows. Orion's entire body brightened with joy, the bioluminescent patterns swirling more rapidly. I promise you won't regret this. The things I can show you, the knowledge I can share. About that, Maya interrupted, the scientist in her fully emerging now. I have about 1,000 questions about interstellar travel. And your planet's ecosystem. And your species' evolutionary history. As the dawn broke over the horizon, they remained deep in conversation, a human astronomer and her alien husband, bridging worlds through knowledge and love under the watchful eyes of distant stars. 6 months had passed since the wedding night revelation. Maya sat at their apartment's kitchen table, poring over star charts while Orion prepared breakfast. In his natural form now, they had agreed he would only use the appearance-altering device when they had visitors. His luminescent hands moved with fluid grace as he cracked eggs into a bowl. Your presentation is today, isn't it? He asked, glancing over at the papers spread across the table. Maya nodded, nervously shuffling her notes. The committee has been remarkably open-minded so far, but what I'm proposing today goes beyond theoretical astronomy. I'm essentially rewriting our understanding of habitable zones and interstellar travel. While carefully excluding the source of your insights, Orion added with a soft harmonic chuckle that Maya had grown to love. Their life together had found an unexpected rhythm. By day, Maya continued her work at the observatory, subtly incorporating her new knowledge into peer-reviewed papers, presenting revolutionary concepts as theoretical models rather than the concrete facts Orion had shared with her. By night, they continued her education about the cosmos, with Orion teaching her things about the universe that human science wouldn't discover for centuries. Dar. Ramos is getting suspicious, Maya admitted, accepting the cup of strong, salt-infused tea Orion handed her. She'd developed a taste for it over the months. Yesterday he asked me point-blank how I'd made such dramatic leaps in my research. I hate lying to him. Orion's bioluminescence dimmed slightly, a sign of concern Maya had learned to recognize. We need to be careful, Maya. If people discovered what I am. The unspoken hung between them. They discussed it extensively, the potential consequences if Orion's true nature became known. Best case, he would be studied as a scientific curiosity. Worst case, detained as a potential threat to national security. Neither scenario appealed. A sharp knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Maya froze, her eyes darting to Orion, who immediately activated his appearance-altering device. Within seconds, the alien luminescence faded, replaced by his human disguise. Through the peephole, Maya saw 2 official-looking men in dark suits. Her stomach dropped. Dr. Maya Patel Jackson, one asked when she opened the door. And Mr. Orion Jackson? We're with the Office of Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification. We'd like to ask you some questions about certain anomalies in your recent research papers. Maya's grip tightened on the doorknob. I don't understand. Your recent publications contain concepts that our scientific advisors find improbable for someone at your career stage to develop independently, the second man explained. Particularly your paper on theoretical methods of circumventing light speed limitations. Perhaps we could discuss this inside? The first agent's tone made it clear this wasn't a request. What followed was 3 hours of intense questioning in their living room. Maya maintained that her theories were simply that, theories, mathematical models, educated guesses. Orion remained mostly silent, offering only that he supported his wife's brilliant work. The agents eventually left, but not before making it clear they would be monitoring the couple's activities. They suspect something, Maya whispered after closing the door behind them. What do we do now? Orion deactivated his disguise, his true form reappearing with a shimmer of blue light. I've been preparing for this possibility, he admitted. In my ship's storage compartment. Your ship? Maya interrupted. It's still intact? You never mentioned. It's hidden in the mountains, Orion explained. Dormant but functional. I've been making repairs using Earth technologies as substitutes for damaged components. Maya sank onto the couch, processing this new information. All this time, you had a way to leave. Orion knelt before her. I never planned to leave without you. But now, we might need to consider it, for both our safety. Leave Earth? The enormity of what he was suggesting hit her. You mean, go to another planet? There are outposts, neutral territories where different species coexist. Places where we could live without hiding. His luminescent eyes held hers. Or we could find an uninhabited world and make it our own. The ship has enough range. Maya's mind reeled with possibilities. Leaving behind her career, her friends, her planet, it seemed unthinkable. Yet staying might mean Orion's capture, perhaps worse. What about my research? My work has just started making real progress. Orion smiled. Maya, the discoveries you're so proud of are elementary school science where I come from. Imagine what you could learn, what you could discover out there. He gestured toward the window, toward the stars beyond. You've spent your life studying distant worlds. Now you have the chance to visit them. That night, as government vehicles monitored their apartment building from across the street, Maya and Orion packed essentials into inconspicuous bags. Slipping out the service entrance at dawn, they drove into the mountains where Orion's ship lay concealed beneath a holographic camouflage that made it appear as nothing more than an unremarkable boulder formation. It's not too late to change your mind, Orion said as he deactivated the camouflage, revealing a sleek vessel unlike anything in Earth's aerospace technology. Once we leave Earth's atmosphere, returning would be complicated. Maya looked back toward the distant city where she'd spent her entire life, then up at the brightening sky that had always called to her. Her scientific curiosity warred with the comfort of the familiar. Will I ever see Earth again? She asked softly. I can't promise when, Orion answered honestly. But with the proper precautions and enough time for your disappearance to become a cold case, yes, we could return someday. Maya took a deep breath and stepped toward the ship. I've spent my whole life looking up at the stars. It's time I visited them. As the ship's entry ramp closed behind them, Maya felt not loss but anticipation. The interior was both alien and somehow familiar, like the strange, beautiful being she had married. Where to first? Orion asked as the control console illuminated beneath his touch. Maya smiled, thinking of all the exoplanets she had studied from afar. Show me the worlds with twin suns. I've always wondered what a double sunrise looks like. The ship hummed to life around them, systems activating in harmonious sequence. Through the viewport, Maya watched Earth grow smaller as they ascended, not an ending, but a beginning. She had married an alien and discovered not just his secret, but a universe of possibilities. As Earth's blue sphere receded behind them, Maya felt Orion's hand, his true hand, cool and luminescent, entwine with hers. The universe stretched before them, vast and unexplored, just as their future together now was. Whatever challenges awaited them among the stars, they would face them together, two beings from different worlds who had built a bridge between them with something as simple and as complex as love.